My fiancé whispered. I feel like marrying you would mean settling before my best years even begin. I removed the ring, wished her happiness, and walked away without resistance. Nearly a year later, she accidentally saw my wedding photos while posting emotional quotes about losing rare people at 3 o'clock in the morning online. I feel like marrying you would mean settling before my best years even begin. She said it quietly, like it wasn't a grenade, like she was just commenting on the weather outside or the way the soup tasted. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just sat there and let the words finish landing. Because words like that don't fully arrive all at once. They travel slow. They settle into your chest one syllable at a time. The apartment felt smaller after she said it. The kind of small where the walls don't move, but somehow the air gets thinner. I looked at her hand. The ring was still on her finger. My grandmother's ring. The one I had resized twice just to fit her correctly. The one I'd carried in my jacket pocket for 11 days before I finally got the nerve to ask. I looked at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then I looked back at her face. She wasn't crying. That was the part that stayed with me the longest. She wasn't sorry. She was waiting to see what I would do. And what I did was the last thing she expected. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't ask her to explain it differently or take it back. I just nodded slowly, like she'd finally confirmed something I'd already started suspecting. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last conversation we'd ever have as a couple. Less than a year later, she'd be awake at 3 in the morning, staring at my wedding photos on someone else's feed, reposting quotes about how rare people only show up once in your life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand something first. The moment she said those words wasn't the beginning of the end. It was just the first time she said out loud what she'd been feeling for months. And honestly, that should have been a relief. But it wasn't, because some truths hurt worse when they're finally spoken. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. Not just for us. For me. For the direction my life was about to take. Looking back now, the signs were there so much earlier. I just kept interpreting them as stress, as growth pains, as the natural friction of two people trying to build something together. I was wrong. That wasn't friction. That was her slowly deciding I wasn't enough. And what I should have done was recognize it sooner. But that's the thing about loving someone quietly. You absorb a lot of damage before you realize it's no longer love that's keeping you in place. It's just habit. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. My name is Vernon. I was 31 when this happened. Colleen was 28. We'd been together for years, engaged for 8 months. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Not luxury, not shabby either. Clean floors, good light in the mornings. A kitchen where we used to cook together on Sundays before Sunday. Cooking became something we stopped doing without discussing it. I work in logistics operations, supply chain consulting for mid-sized companies. It's not glamorous. Nobody at a party lights up when you explain what you do. But it was paying off. Slowly and quietly and consistently, the way real things usually do. Colleen worked in marketing at a digital agency. She was good at it. She had the kind of energy that rooms noticed. Quick with a comeback. Sharp instincts. She understood what people wanted to see before they knew they wanted it. I admired that about her. I still do, honestly. That part never changed. What changed was the context around her. The people she started spending more time with. The standards she started measuring things against. And slowly, quietly, without either of us formally announcing it, she started measuring me. It didn't start dramatically. That's the part nobody tells you about. Relationship erosion doesn't come with a warning label. It comes in small doses. A comment here, a comparison there, a pause that lasts a half-second too long when you answer a question about your plans. The first time I noticed something shifting, we were at a dinner party. Her coworker Marcus had just gotten promoted to creative director, 29 years old. New apartment in the West Village. He drove a car that made other people's cars feel embarrassed to be in the same parking lot. Colleen watched him move through that room like she was studying something. Not flirting. I want to be clear about that. It wasn't attraction exactly. It was something quieter and in some ways worse. It was comparison. The kind where someone looks at another person's life and then looks at yours and does the math in real time. On the ride home, she was quiet. Then she said, Marcus closed a deal with a European brand last month. His bonus alone was more than your quarterly salary. I kept my eyes on the road. Good for Marcus, I said. She looked out the window. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. We didn't talk the rest of the drive home. I should have paid more attention to her expression when she said it. Colleen had 2 close friends. Rhonda and Patricia. Rhonda was freshly divorced and had somehow turned that into a personality. She talked about her ex-husband the way people talk about a country they escaped from, with contempt and a strange kind of pride. Patricia was in a relationship with a man who made a lot of money doing something in tech that none of us fully understood. She wore it the way some people wear designer bags. Prominently. Often. With the specific intention of making sure you noticed. I didn't dislike them. But I noticed early that whenever Colleen spent a Saturday with them, something came home with her that wasn't there when she left. A restlessness. A dissatisfaction she couldn't quite name, but couldn't quite put down either. One night, I came home to find her sitting on the couch with her legs pulled up under her, scrolling her phone. She didn't look up immediately. When she did, she said, "Do you ever think about where you want to be in 5 years?" "Yeah," I said. "All the time. And I'm working toward it." She nodded slowly. Like that answer was technically acceptable, but somehow still disappointing. "Patricia's boyfriend just put a down payment on a place in Tribeca," she said. "Good for them," I said. She looked at me a beat longer than normal. "Don't you want more than this?" I looked around the apartment. At the life we'd built together. "I want what I'm building," I said. "And I'm building it." She went back to her phone. That was the night something shifted, though I didn't name it until much later. The comments started becoming more frequent after that. Small ones. Precise ones. The kind designed to land softly, but leave a mark. "You're so steady, Vernon. Sometimes I just wish you were more driven." I was working 70-hour weeks at the time. "You never want to go anywhere exciting." "Marcus just took his girlfriend to Lisbon. We had a trip to Montreal planned for the following month." "I'm not criticizing you. I just feel like we're standing still." I had just signed a consulting contract that was the biggest of my career. She didn't know the details of that contract yet. I hadn't told her because I was still finalizing the numbers. That was a mistake I kept making. I moved quietly. I built quietly. And she interpreted my silence as stagnation. I should have realized earlier that she wasn't waiting for proof. She was waiting for permission to leave. There was a night about 3 months before the end. We were supposed to go to her agency's client reception. Colleen came out of the bedroom in a dress that stopped conversations. She looked incredible. I told her. She smiled. Said thank you. But something was already off. The kind of off that you feel, but can't prove. We got to the event. I shook hands, made small talk, did all the things you do when you're trying to fit into a room that wasn't really built for you. At some point I lost Colleen in the crowd. I found her 20 minutes later near the bar, deep in conversation with a man I'd seen in her office once before. His name was Derek. He worked in finance. He had the kind of jawline that architectural magazines would have put on a cover. He was saying something that was making her laugh. Not politely. Actually laugh. I watched for a moment before walking over. She introduced me. Derek shook my hand with the exact right amount of firmness that says, "I see you. You're not a threat, but let's both acknowledge I'm winning." For the ride home, Colleen was animated in a way she hadn't been with me in a long time. "Derek is so interesting," she said. "He's building an investment portfolio in Southeast Asia. He was asking me about branding for emerging markets." "Sounds interesting," I said. He offered to introduce me to some people at his firm. I nodded. I didn't ask the questions I wanted to ask. That message bothered me more later than it did in the moment. The argument that split everything open happened on a Tuesday. It started about dishes. That should tell you everything about how relationship endings really work. Nobody sits down and says, "I've been quietly withdrawing from you for 6 months, and now I want to formalize it." They pick a fight about dishes, or about how you loaded the dishwasher wrong, or about why you didn't respond to a text for 3 hours. Colleen came home to a sink with 2 mugs and a plate in it. I'd had a brutal 12-hour day and genuinely planned to wash them after dinner. She stood at the sink with her arms crossed. "Every time," she said. "Every single time. It's 2 mugs, Colleen. It's not about the mugs." "Then what's it about?" And that was the moment. That was when everything she'd been storing for months decided it had finally found an exit. "It's about the fact that I'm 28 years old, and I'm standing in this Crown Heights apartment arguing about dishes with a man who is perfectly fine with perfectly average." I set down what I was holding. "Perfectly average," I repeated. "I don't mean it like that." "What do you mean?" She turned to face me fully. "I mean that you're safe, Vernon. You're consistent and reliable, and you're never going to embarrass me, and that's all great. But sometimes I wake up and I think, is this it? Is this the story I'm going to tell for the rest of my life?" I didn't respond right away. I let the words exist in the room without immediately chasing them down. "What story do you want to tell?" I asked. She looked out the window. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I think I want the chance to figure it out." and I'm scared that marrying you means I never will." Then came the line, calm and clean, and without any apparent awareness of what it would cost her. "I feel like marrying you would mean settling before my best years even begin." The room didn't explode. No dramatic music played. The city outside the window kept moving like nothing had happened. I sat very still. I had spent 4 years with this woman. I had watched her sleep. I had driven her to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when she thought something was wrong with her heart. I had held her hand at her father's funeral. I had resized my grandmother's ring. Twice. And she was standing in our kitchen telling me that choosing me would mean settling. I looked at the ring on her finger. 3 seconds. Just 3. Then I said, "Okay." 1 word. She blinked. "Okay. You deserve to find out what you're looking for," I said. I walked to the counter. I placed my apartment key down carefully. I turned around and looked at her one last time. She was standing completely still. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected me to fight, to argue, to negotiate for a version of us she'd already quietly decided didn't exist. "Take care of yourself, Qley." I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it the same way I always did. Gently, out of respect for the neighbors. That detail says everything about who I was when I loved her. The next morning I texted one person. My older brother Gilbert. 3 words. "I need space." He called immediately. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He said, "Come stay here for a few days." I did. I slept on his couch for 5 nights. I didn't post anything online. I didn't call anyone to explain. I didn't try to reach Qley. Some people cope with silence by filling it with noise. I coped by letting it be silent. The first week was the hardest. Not because I was broken, because I kept reaching for habits. Checking my phone to text her something funny I'd seen. Starting to dial her number before remembering. Looking at the passenger seat of my car. Grief isn't always about love. Sometimes it's just about rewiring patterns you built over 4 years. That takes time. But time is actually something that works in your favor once you stop fighting it. I moved into a smaller place on my own. Got serious about the consulting contract I'd signed. Threw everything I had been quietly preparing into overdrive. There's something that happens when the emotional weight of a relationship that's been slowly suffocating you is finally lifted. You don't realize how much energy you were spending on managing someone else's dissatisfaction until it's no longer your responsibility. That energy goes somewhere. Mine went into work, into early mornings and focused evenings, into saying yes to projects I'd been conservative about before. I stopped second-guessing myself. I stopped editing myself for an audience of one who had already stopped watching. Within 3 months, the consulting contract had opened 3 other doors. By month 5, I was leading a team of 6. By month 7, I had been asked to present at an operations conference in Atlanta. I'm not telling you this to flex. I'm telling you this because this is what happens when a quietly ambitious man stops carrying someone else's skepticism. He becomes exactly what she didn't believe he could be. Right on schedule. Without her. Her name was Simone. I met her at an industry event in the fall. She was a supply chain analyst for a pharmaceutical company. She laughed at something I said before I'd even finished saying it. Not the polite laugh people give when they're being kind. The actual kind. The kind where the timing is slightly off because the laugh arrived before the punchline did. I like that. We talked for 2 hours. Exchanged numbers. Had dinner the following Thursday. She showed up on time. She asked real questions. She listened to the answers. I wasn't looking for anything. I hadn't planned this. But I was present enough to recognize when something real was in front of me. That's the thing about healing correctly. You don't rush it, but you also don't miss it when it arrives. Simone was different in ways I didn't know I'd been missing. She wasn't impressed by appearance. She was impressed by how you move through problems, how you handled difficulty without making everyone around you carry it, how you treated people who had nothing to offer you. On our 3rd date, my card was declined by mistake. Bank error. I stayed calm. Apologized. Used a backup card. Didn't make a scene. She told me later that was the moment she decided she wanted to keep knowing me. Some men lose their whole personality when something inconvenient happens in public, she said. I noticed you just handled it and moved on. It sounds like a small thing, but it's the small things that reveal everything. We dated for 6 months before I knew. I knew the way you know things that don't require a lot of convincing. The way you know certain music fits certain moments. The way you know certain spaces feel like home the first time you walk into them. I proposed on a Sunday morning. No elaborate plan. No audience. We were standing in her kitchen. She was making coffee. I had been carrying the ring for 3 weeks, trying to find the right moment. That morning I just looked at her and understood that the right moment was any moment I chose to make it that. I said her name. She turned around, and I asked. She said yes before I'd fully finished the question. We got married 4 months later. Small ceremony. The people who actually mattered. I wasn't thinking about Qley. That's the honest truth. She had stopped being a daily thought somewhere around month 4. Not because of bitterness. Because healing actually worked. Because Simone filled the space that grief vacates. Because building something real takes all of your attention and there's very little left over for regret. I wasn't thinking about Qley at all. Until someone sent me a screenshot. The message came from a mutual friend, Jerome. He sent it at 8 in the morning with no caption. Just the screenshot. It was a post on Colleen's profile. Posted at 3:07 a.m. One of those quote graphics. The kind with soft lighting and cursive font over a blurred background. Some people are rare. Not just good. Rare. And when you let those people go, the absence never really fills. It just changes shape. Underneath it, she had posted again. A second one. This time just text. I saw something tonight that I wasn't prepared to see. I'm okay. I'm just being honest with myself for maybe the first time in a long time. Jerome had told me later, separately, what she'd seen. A mutual friend of ours had posted wedding photos. We'd been tagged. Simone and I at the venue. She was laughing at something. I was looking at her the way I used to look at Qley during the early years. That specific quality of attention. Qley had seen it. 3 in the morning. Scrolling through a feed. And the photo had stopped her. I sat with the screenshot for a minute. Not with satisfaction. Not with anger. With something quieter. Something close to recognition. Because this is what happens when people spend years measuring the value of what they have against the image of what they think they deserve, and then one day the math finally comes due. She had wanted her best years. She had wanted the kind of story that would make a room pay attention. She had looked at me and seen someone steady and quiet and reliable and called that settling. She had gone looking for the version of life she believed she was owed. I don't know what she found. I know it didn't look like what she imagined at 3:07 in the morning. I never contacted her. Not once after the night I walked out. No final conversation. No, I hope you found what you were looking for. No public response to the post. Some people would have wanted that moment. The satisfaction of saying, see, look what you lost. I didn't need it. Because by then I understood something important. The life I was living wasn't a response to her leaving. It was the life I had been building the whole time. She just couldn't see it from where she was standing. And she chose to stop standing next to me before she could. Here is the part I've never said out loud. The part that changes the framing a little. In the last year of our relationship, I had been approached by a firm in Atlanta about a senior consulting position. The kind of offer that would have changed the financial picture of our life significantly. I had turned it down because Qley had just gotten promoted. Because uprooting both of us from my opportunity didn't feel fair. I never told her about that offer. Because I didn't want to make her feel guilty. Because that's how I loved her. Quietly. At cost to myself. Not for credit. Not for recognition. Just because I thought that's what you did for someone you chose. When the same firm approached me again after I left, there was nothing holding me back. I took the role, worked remotely, then transitioned. It was the beginning of everything that came after. She never knew that she had been one of the reasons I turned down an Atlanta offer. She thought I was standing still. I was standing still for her. 6 months after the wedding photos were posted, I heard through Jerome again. Not a screenshot this time. Just a mention in conversation. Qley had started dating someone. Marketing director. Good looking. Traveled a lot. She seems happy, Jerome said carefully. Good, I said. And I meant it. Not sarcastically. Not with hidden bitterness. Actually, I meant it the way you mean things when they no longer carry weight. When you've processed something completely enough that wishing someone harm feels as pointless as wishing for weather to be different. She was someone I had loved deeply. That never stops being true. It just stops being the most important thing. Simone and I moved into a house in the spring. Not Tribeca, not the West Village. A house with a real backyard. A kitchen with enough counter space to actually cook. A neighborhood where people say good morning and mean it. She planted tomatoes in the backyard. They didn't grow correctly the first season. She documented the whole failure in a little notebook and tried again the following spring. That's who she is. She doesn't discard things because the first attempt didn't perform the way she imagined. She studies what went wrong and she tries again. I think about that a lot. I think about the difference between people who leave when the expected result doesn't appear immediately and people who stay in the problem long enough to actually solve it. I married someone who stays in the problem. I saw Qley once. About 14 months after the divorce was finalized. It was accidental. A coffee shop in Park Slope that we both apparently still frequented without realizing it. She was at a corner table with her laptop. She looked up when I walked in. For a moment, neither of us did anything. Then she gave a small wave. I nodded. I ordered my coffee. I sat on the other side of the room. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. Her by leaving, me by not chasing, and the universe by arranging the rest. I finished my coffee. I put on my jacket. I walked past her table toward the door. "Vernon," she said quietly. I stopped, looked at her. She looked like she had more to say, but whatever it was, it didn't find its way out. She just nodded. "You look good," she said. "Take care of yourself, Qley," I said. Same words, same tone, same quiet, different meaning this time. Because the first time I said those words, it was a goodbye that still hurt. This time it was just the truth. I walked out. The door closed behind me, gently, the way it always did. Some people will read this and call it a revenge story. It isn't. Revenge implies I did something to cause her pain. I just stopped absorbing it. Some people will read this and say I should have fought harder for the relationship. Maybe, but you can't fight for someone who has already told you you're not worth fighting for. Some people will read this and feel sorry for her. That's fine too. She's a person who made choices based on what she could see, and she couldn't see far enough. That's a human failure, not a character assassination. I don't hate her. I'm not bitter. I'm just honest. The last time she viewed my profile was on a Thursday. I know because I happened to check something unrelated and noticed. No comment. No like. No message. Just a view. 14 seconds. Then gone. I thought about what 14 seconds means. Enough time to see what's there. Not enough time to do anything about it. That's the story in a single number. She had all the time in the world to see what was there, and she spent it deciding she deserved something else. By the time she knew differently, 14 seconds was all she had left, and by then, my life no longer had room for her in it. Some people only understand the value of a thing once it belongs to someone else. That's not a lesson. That's just how it ended.